Welcome, everybody, to our next session here at the Tenbound Conference. Pipeline generation is a team sport with Mr. James Lamberti, CMO of SalesIntel. How are you doing today, James?
Excellent. Hello, everyone. Good to be here. Glad to see you.
I am so excited to dive in on this. This is something that you have experienced. You're in the midst of building now, and bring a ton of tips and strategies for folks that are attempting to do this, which is very, very difficult, whether you're an individual contributor or a leader of revenue generation. James, tell us about how do we make this a team sport?
Excellent. Good to be here. Thanks again, David. Yeah, so just by way of introduction, CMO over here at SalesIntel. And I have, 10 or 11 times now been involved with sort of growth stage companies in various forms, some very, very large, some very, very small. Done a lot of board advisement, been on boards before. And I hope today what I can deliver is a lightning talk, if you will, on some principles that I leverage and have used through a lot of battle scars in doing this well. And I think, hopefully you all take a couple things from this, right? Not everything I mentioned might apply to you as individuals or as revenue leaders, but my goal is to have you walk away with 1, 2, 3, 4 ideas that you can take back to your virtual office, I guess, and hopefully leverage. So let me jump right in. And first of all, start with this kind of fun concept. Since tonight is literally the NFL kickoff, and whether you're a fan or not, you can relate to this analogy. Last year's Super Bowl, final seconds, who scored this touchdown, right? It seems very obvious, right? The Cooper Kupp is shown here catching that ball, but maybe Matt Stafford had something to do with it. He threw it. And maybe the offensive line set up the time that Matt Stafford needed to make this pass. And maybe on the previous possession, if you know football, Aaron Donald, who's an incredible defensive player, made a stop, right? The point is this, in an analogy to pipeline generation, it is a team sport. The fact that the last touch was Cooper Kupp cannot ignore the fact that there was a whole team behind him that played 60 minutes, right? And so in a way that this catches the result of multi-touch attribution. So that's the point I want to make here, and as a good way to start to think about how I approach pipeline generation and conversion. So let me jump in and start with oops, I went too far. A little sensitive on the screen here. So, this is the familiarity we all have, right? You get on these teams, you're part of the demand gen function, maybe you're part of the sales, the revenue ops team, a sales leader, a BDR leader, a marketing leader, but it gets frustrating. The amount of energy and time we spend internally debating who's responsible for what, who gets credit for what, I'm always shocked at how this industry battles itself as opposed to focusing on the market. And so the idea here is to make a bold statement, right? That pipeline generation is not demand function. It's not this responsibility of the demand gen function, right? It is a holistic go-to-market approach. Everyone involved in go-to-market, it has shared responsibility. And when I talk go-to-market, I'm talking about product, marketing, BDRs, sales, customer success. And by the way, that motion, who does what, where, and how we invest is going to be different for every company, every new product, every market, every new feature, and every new persona that we go after. So right away, I want to challenge the fact that I challenge it as a CMO, that if I'm dealing with a CEO who says, I need a demand gen function to scale demand gen, I'm like, well, you need a go-to-market team that holistically does this really well. And maybe demand gen is going to be a big part of it, but maybe not right away. That's the point, right? And a lot of the context today is going to be, from my perspective, a sequence. My perspective is growth stage companies, mid-sized companies that ultimately want to become $100, $200 million companies. And so the sequence here matters, is my point. So step one, healthy product market fit. Now, why would healthy product market fit matter to pipeline generation? it's a root cause issue. If you think about root cause issues, right, going all the way back to the beginning of why a campaign didn't work, oftentimes it starts with just the basic hygiene of healthy product market fit. So a lightning talk fashion, I'm going to give you some pro tips, right? Number one, the first person marketing hire you should make, and probably the most important hire on the marketing team, if I'm being really honest, is product marketing, right? And the reason is that they need liaison between engineering, product, and the market, listening, not talking, listening. And when they hear what they hear, they need to play back in personal terms, right? So what I mean by that is oftentimes when establishing product market fit, we talk feature function. I would say 80-90% of what I see out there is feature function, feature function, feature function. The buyers, your champions, there's something personal in it for them. And that personal emotional appeal needs to be there. Good product marketers recognize that, right? And are able to reflect what they hear back in very personal terms. That's the second pro tip. And the third one is to go slow to move fast. And that term or concept is how I think about a good product fit launch process. So what I would say is this: have the discipline to go slow in your launch process, to know that you got product market fit before you go out and generate pipeline and try to close deals. And the three steps I would take is, number one, have one good customer that's very involved in what you're doing, what feature you're building, or represents the market you're trying to go after, right? Take that one customer and build what they need. Before you write code, go to 5 more or 3 more or 10 more, whatever makes sense. Confirm that they see value. Maybe even confirm, ideally, in a beta phase, that they're willing to pay for it. Get them to commit, and then deliver the feature and make sure it's or the product and make sure the value is there. By doing that, it's going to take longer. You're going to go slower, but when you go to generate demand, what you're going to have is some happy customers, maybe some testimonials, maybe a case study, maybe a webinar you can leverage to talk about what you're doing as a new company, a new market you're opening up, etc. But so often moving into the next comment here, people forget the gotchas here. One is that product marketing is not product management, right? That's a huge mistake I see. It is a marketing job. It is a marketing function. Don't make the mistake of thinking of your product marketing team as product management. And if you end up in a situation where sales does not view your product marketer as the most desired person to have on a call, you might want to look at what that person or function is doing, and maybe even the talent you've got, right? So that's a key gotcha. And then finally, make sure you understand that product market fit is a never-ending quest. You might be a huge company, right? But how often have you rolled out a feature, had a demand gen campaign and plan, and it just fell flat? And everyone's pointing at the demand gen team, pointing at the sales team, when in fact, there was never a good disciplined approach to making sure that product market fit was there. So that's number one. And even though I know you're probably not all product marketers, you should be asking these questions of your product marketing team. Number two is the emergence of the growth hacker. This is one of my favorite roles in a company. And the reason is because it forces you to earn demand before you go and try and pay for it. Too often we skip right from product market fit to scale up a big paid campaign. The growth hacker, when done well, is a way to make sure you're earning demand and earning pipeline before you go and pay for it. And so pro tips here: content is king in extending those assets, right? So for example, this talk I'm giving you is, I've given 2-hour LMS-based trainings on this lightning talk, right? I've often, been in extended engagements as a CMO or an advisor where I do it for 6 months. The point is, this conversation is one that I leverage in many, many ways, many, many different times, and that's good. That's extending assets. The other thing that a growth hacker does extremely well is anchors it all in SEO. This is a growth hacker's best friend, right? This will give you the foundation of organic inbound that can build pipeline probably more effectively than anything. What I routinely see is that SEO, natural search, organic search, is the best converting form of inbound that you can possibly get. I've seen it in every company when you commit to content grounded in SEO. And then finally, start with marketing automation. This is the growth hacker's second best friend. Again, what I see is people hiring a massive BDR, SDR team to replicate what should be done through marketing automation, right? There are incredible capabilities out there. I mean, companies like SalesIntel that can give you the context, the intent, the technographic, right? We can put that all into your ICP and you can create really thoughtful marketing automated campaigns using the content you produced. And that can be a very efficient starting ground before you hire BDRs, SDRs to do that work. And then as you harvest that automation, send it to those teams. The second gotcha is don't pay for leads before you've earned them first. And that is a way to test, do you really have the product market fit? Do you really have the content you need? If you just jump to paid as a reaction to needing demand, it's almost always going to fall flat. And then your CEO or your CRO is going to be frustrated. You're going to have a hard time getting budget in the future. And then third gotcha, don't ignore data and infrastructure too long. I mentioned some things, the basic block and tackling of a good CRM, good marketing automation, and then a sales insights and analytics capability like SalesIntel to give you the contact data and the account data you need to thoughtfully build out those programs. The next thing is now you're starting to, you've got product market fit, you've got automation, you've earned leads, so you know that the market's going to respond when you start to pay for them. This is where things get more interesting, right? You're really truly ready to scale now. And this is a point where I often see a break, right? And what I mean by that break is you've got product market fit, you've got product people, good salespeople, maybe a relatively small team that's working on that feature, working on that part of the market, or you're a new company that's trying to scale. Point is this, at this point, you often say, we're ready. We're going to bring in a marketing team. We're going to get a professional marketing team. What happens? The marketing team takes the organic, conversational, like realistic way, pragmatic way that you built this initial fit, and they make it academic. They make it ivory tower. And I can say this and be honest about it because I've been in marketing. I've also been in sales. So my point is this: build out the marketing function in a pragmatic way. It's lockstep with how sales and product market fit is unfolded, right? And very simple terms, when I'm building out the team or advising how to build out this team, it's a pragmatic go-to-market approach. Not everyone's in marketing. About amplifying your position. Number two is educate the market. When I say educate the market, I'm not just talking prospects. I'm talking your own people, your own salespeople, your own BDR people, partners, and finally customers and prospects. So often you end up just going after the prospects. You ignore all those other dimensions of the market. Market's a big word. The third one here is drive competency and confidence. Again, so often we go out into the market and we don't take the time to make sure that the people who are catching the pass, right, are extremely fluent. Where did this lead come from? Who's the persona we're talking to? What do I know about them emotionally? So this is another go slow to go fast moment. Training and having competence and confidence is so important to conversion, and it's often ignored. It's done very badly. And then finally, the building and closing out of pipeline is this is where the team sport comes in, and I'll get to how that unfolds in a minute. Now, I don't have time to turn this particular 4-point issue into actionable, detailed responses. But if you come to our virtual booth, right, then I can talk more about what I mean by build and amplify the position, what I mean by educate our target market, what I mean by building confidence. All of this is detailed and thoughtfully organized. You may not do it all at once, but it gives you a sense of that and how to do that. So I'm going to move a little quicker given the time we've got. This leads to the last and probably most important point I'll make, which is the demand center, right? And this is where the team really comes together in having sequenced in the way I just described. If you take my advice or see wisdom in what I'm trying to explain. The demand center, it's pictured here as a luxurious resort where everyone can relax. It would be really nice to feel that way when you showed up on this call. But here's the point, right? When you think about the demand center, and I love calling it the demand center, even branding it that way internally. The demand center is about revenue operations and sales leadership that at the front end have very clear understanding of their targets, very clear territory plans, and those are embedded operationally in what you're doing every day, right? The other part of this cross-functional team is where the marketing leadership, BDR, SDR leaders, and sales leadership show up. Each of those functions having responsibility to generate pipeline, right? And I'll get to how that debate occurs in a moment. And then there's conversion, right? This is the competence and confidence aspect. Conversion is a function of good product marketing, good sales enablement, and a rigorous training focus, right? They're also part of the demand center because conversion is just as important as building pipeline, of course. And then finally, there's the measurement optimization, which is the revenue operations side of it. When this team is formed cross-functionally, meeting every week or twice a week, and driven by something like you've all seen before, right? Here's an actual real funnel with various periods. I've taken the benchmark data that you see here is some serious decisions, benchmark data I got on the various conversion rates through the funnel. But the team meets and they analyze the funnel every single week, right? And in this case, you can clearly see that there's a issue in the funnel from MQL to SAL, right? It's very clear that's where the problem lies. All these other numbers are performing, if you believe the serious decisions benchmarks, at the right spot. What is this team now able to do? Attack that part of the funnel together, because it's not one team member's problem. In the case of MQL to SAL conversion, we all know it might be the quality of the leads that need to get better. It might be how we're doing qualification in the first phase, or even the definition of the ICP we think we've got. Or equally as likely, it's a training and conversion issue, right? It's an objection handling issue. The point is the team knows what part of the funnel to attack, and they do it together because everyone's got a part in it. So I can't say enough and stress enough the value of the demand center cross-functionally. So pro tips here where I want to spend some time. Number one, first touch, last touch. Look, it all matters. And how you use that data depends on where in the funnel you're talking. So for example, I often hear that my webinars aren't converting quickly enough. Well, webinar is a top funnel, first touch concept, generally speaking. You can do a webinar to your existing customers to get them to adopt a new feature or expand. Okay, that's last touch. But generally speaking, like, what is the purpose of that activity? And then start to think about, what do I care about at this point? Am I looking really to evaluate on the first touch because I just want to get people engaged, nurture them, and then move them down the funnel? Or is this intended to be last touch? So I see too often that people apply, I'm going to measure everything on first touch. I'm going to measure everything last touch, and I'm going to build out the economics and my go-to-market that way. Really can't do that. The other big issue in the demand center is shared KPIs. So I absolutely require essentially pipeline conversion are ultimately the responsibility of the marketing and the product marketing team and the BDRs doing outbound and the EEs doing outbound. Conversion is also a shared responsibility, but it's very simple in my mind that the demand center team and the functions in it, their KPIs, their MBOs, their bonuses are pipeline conversion, and then ultimately that leads to new ARR. If you try to pick apart KPIs, you end up creating these internal struggles, and that's where you get conflict. You get counterproductive behavior on the team, and then get buy-in on the measurement and that approach early and often. So one of the first things I do with a new company or as a new CMO is I go to the CEO, I go to the COO, I go to the sales CRO, and I say, look, right away we want to understand what we've got at our disposal to measure, and how we're all going to agree to measure, and how we're then going to leverage that measurement to set KPIs so that we're working together. And you work with what you've got. You don't need multi-touch attribution, right? You can work on a first touch, last touch basis, the way I described, and be very, very effective as a team, especially if you measure it through the funnel process. And the gotchas, the flip side is disjointed KPIs. My apologies. Disjointed KPIs drive the wrong behavior. I would say if there's a number one thing to take away here, it's like look at the KPIs for every team member in that demand center. Get the KPIs to be aligned, so that the BDR lead isn't arguing about how come you're not moving my meeting set to S1, like I'm gold on S1, or whatever the conversation is, right? The other thing that's a gotcha is changes in measurement are the enemy of progress. Every time you completely reset your measurement, guess what, right? You're back to square one. It's the same with the position of your company as a marketer. It's the same problem, right? You're back to the beginning, trying to build out an understanding of how to optimize. And then the final gotcha on the demand center team specifically is the lack of commitment to humble, hungry, smart. If you've not read about that concept, go look it up. It's something that I think is super important to make the demand center work. Humble, hungry, smart is a concept of team play that is about you come with humility, but you're hungry about wanting to solve the problem, and you're smart about how you analyze it. That creates open, healthy debate among the team about what's working, what's not working, and how we together are going to go about dealing with it. And all of this at the end of the day leads to conversations with the CEO that are not about, oh my God, my demand gen function's working or not working, or oh my God, my BDR team can't convert and qualify and do discovery in a proper way. It's like, here's the analysis we've got. Here's where we know we need to get better. And by the way, here's how we see the company going to market and where we need to invest because it's performing well. It might be demand gen. It might be a bigger BDR team. It might be more AE selling directly. That motion and all those metrics is not a one-size-fits-all answer. You just have to have the data and the honesty of a humble, hungry, smart demand center team to drive it. So I hope that this was fun for you all. I would encourage you to go to the virtual booth. I'll show up there if you want to talk more, and try to make this a true lightning talk, David. I hope I delivered for you.
Oh my gosh. The whole time I was like, "Man, James really gets this." And I was say, whoever is working with James is really lucky because, you can, get in situations where you don't really tie together all the dots as, succinctly and eloquently as that. So, really, really great overview. And I think anybody, if you're an individual contributor that's working in the environment, you can start to see almost like as an internal consultant, is there some point that we're not connecting the dots here?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
is there something that we could potentially work on? So,
Yeah, I think individual. I'm glad you make that point because I think people there might be quite a lot of individual contributors here, or individual team leads, and I think understanding that larger picture is kind of one of the things I hope you take away, and asking hard questions. You'd be surprised how often the root cause of the demand gen problem is just there wasn't really truly product market fit, and you can't win in that scenario, right? If it's not there, and so you got to be asking your product and your product marketing team to substantiate what you're about to go try to take down and market. Show me the customer testimonial. Show me the emotional, not just the functional side, but show me the emotions of what's in it for that individual. Help explain it to me, train me on that. So yeah, I think that's a good point that you're making there, and I would hope people took that away.
big time. And come over to the SalesIntel booth and let's put James and the team on the spot here because I think in our work with companies, you see a lot of go-to-market teams trying to go to market where they haven't found product market fit really. And to your point, there's really we've got to start asking some hard questions first to go back and make sure that that's the case, and then move forward from there. I
Yeah.
see that in a lot of the frustration and revenue alignment
Yeah, yeah. And then spending too quickly when you're in the, a lot of times when you may or may not know that that's the underlying problem, and so there's this moment of panic, right? And suddenly, like, everyone's like, well, let's go do a big demand gen campaign, pay for it, and then it doesn't work there either, and now you've got an equity problem for the marketing team, the demand gen function. Or you run a big sprint on the AE and BDR side, same thing. However it is you do that, and there's some lost opportunity there, and some money and some cloud burned, and now you got to kind of make it up for that from the future, right? So
Yeah.
it's a pretty big deal. So
Really big deal. And James, we want to dive in further. We'll see you over at the Sales Intel booth. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom here with our group.
all right, everyone, enjoy the rest of the conference. We'll maybe see you at the booth. Thank you.